Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this episode. It's been a bit since I've recorded and shared something, and stuff has been going on, and I felt like it's an appropriate time to share a little bit more. So, for many of you that have listened, you may at times get the sense that this idea of peace is something that is almost a little bit utopian. That's like something that could be created in an ideal world but that also seems very challenging to create and to have. And I think that that is somewhat true. It takes multiple parties of being willing to come to the table, and it can make things challenging depending on your own mindset and the mindset of others. But I also recognize for myself that peace is just an idea and a feeling, and it exists due to my thoughts and feelings and how I'm processing things. So ultimately, for me in my life, the responsibility to create and to experience peace is on me. And that can be somewhat frustrating at times when you are not experiencing peace, but it can also be extremely liberating when you realize that if it is really up to you, that you are in control and that there are things that you can do to increase the amount of peace that you feel. I remember about a year ago, I was just on a drive, and I don't remember exactly what I was thinking, but I just had this feeling that there is so much more peace available than I was letting myself experience. And so I started to say to myself out loud as I was driving, "There is so much peace." And I kind of kept repeating it. And it's kind of strange, but I got extremely emotional. I started crying while I was driving, just feeling an overwhelming sense of peace. And it wasn't just the peace that made me emotional, it was also the realization that that peace was always available to me. And that the only reason that it wouldn't be available to me is if I put up barriers from my thoughts and feelings. That I was the only one, I am the only one that can restrict myself and put up barriers to experiencing peace. So that being said, I also want to be honest and genuine and share that it is not always smooth sailing. And there are times in the last month or two that I have felt a lot of conflict, frustration, anger, and anytime those feelings are front and center for me, I don't feel a whole lot of peace. And so I want to talk about that in this episode. I want to just share some of those experiences and what it's like when I go through some of those things, what it feels like, and what do I do during those times, and what do I focus on. And so this, to be completely honest, this episode is a little bit less about religion and beliefs and more about the process of communicating, talking through things, listening, and continuing to come back to the table. So it can be applied to anything. But for me, the thing that can be most triggering or challenging does seem to be religion. And that's not the case for a lot of people, but that is what has highlighted those areas for me. So let me talk a little bit about this. There are times that I focus, or I see things. And again, I'm going to talk, I guess, a little bit of a disclaimer first. I'm going to talk a little bit about some frustrating things that I see in the church, and things that are challenging for me. If you are someone that is close to me and is also an active believer in the church, this may be something that you want to just skip and not listen to, because I'm going to allow myself to just express some of my viewpoints and opinions. Um, so here's your chance to just push pause, or skip to the next episode if is one available at this time. Um, so I think part of all of this is also, we moved back to Utah. We have been in Utah since March, so it's now been 6 months, and I guess over 6 months. It's October 21st, 2025, that I'm recording this right now. And when we visited Utah in the past, I could be exposed to the church and kind of like put up with it. In the episode that I talked about with Jordan, where we'd been here for a little bit, I was learning to cope and to recognize a lot of the good that is here. And I continue to see that. I love my neighbors, the neighborhood that I live in. I really enjoy being close to family members, regardless of their beliefs. But there is a lot more that I am faced with on a daily and weekly basis when it comes to certain beliefs. And to be honest, part of that is just because I'm being sensitive. You know, there's a there's a guy at the gym that is in a leadership position that has expressed some things to me that I didn't really appreciate how it came across. And I think honestly, his intentions are good. Um, but he kind of expressed that he is in a position of authority over me because I'm within his geographic boundaries of which he presides. And it was something small, but it turned me off, and it made me. I was bothered by what he said. I wanted to say, no, you are not. You have zero authority over me. I have no reason to feel like I should listen to you. If you want to share something with me, you can, but don't play that card. That's a simple example of something that really put me on edge, and uh, makes me a little bit irritated. Um, there are also things that I see in the news with the church. I think recently with President Nelson passing. Um, President Nelson was the prophet and president, while I made the decision to leave the church. And I've been a little bit more aware of seeing things from the other side of the table during this time period. So there have been remarks that he has made and direction that he has given that have that I feel have negatively affected me. He's made comments and taught people to not take counsel from non-believers. He's made comments that you shouldn't mingle with non-believers, and I've shared this before, but that trickled down into my ward and my bishop, where my bishop gave my wife the direction not to talk to me about her concerns that she had about the church, because he knew that I didn't believe and I had a lot of my own concerns. So that counsel, I feel like, was destructive. I strongly disagree with that sentiment. Um, there's a few other things about President Nelson, but I in general I had relatively negative feelings towards President Nelson. Also, with the first presidency uh, being with President Oaks being called as the new prophet, I I kind of think, wait, this is supposed to be a church of revelation and inspiration from God, and yet the way that the new prophet is called is, in the words of President Hinckley, you can listen to his interview with Larry King, where Larry King basically said, "How do you become the prophet of the church?" And President Hinckley said, "Well, basically, you get put into a position of leadership and you outlive everyone else." And I appreciate his the way that he voiced that. It was very candid and maybe a little bit humorous. Um, but even that is something that's like, oh, come on, you can't do any better than this. Um, so again, I'm not expressing these viewpoints to try and point out what I think is bad about the church or to harp on the church. My point in sharing these things is that just because I am someone that is seeking and has sought for peace when it comes to the church, there are still things that are challenging for me when I go through those types of experiences and have those realizations or thoughts about the church or leaders of the church. It makes me think, wait, how come why does it feel like I'm the only one seeing this? How are they how are there still people going to church and believing in this organization when there appears to be such huge flaws to me in the organization and how things are carried out? It seems obvious to me that this is not an organization that is led by men that are truly inspired of God. Again, that may come across as being very harsh and offensive to those of you that believe, and that is not my intention. My intention is to share my efforts in trying to feel peace and to share that when I have those types of experiences, I don't feel a whole lot of peace, and that's on me. And so I've experienced this recently, and I've been able to observe that rather than feeling like I'm hard on myself and like, oh, come on, Derek, gosh, you were doing so good. You were feeling peaceful about things, and now you've gone back into this rabbit hole and feeling critical. I can kind of take a step back and I can observe that. I can recognize what I'm going through. And then it gives me a chance to respond in a way rather than guilt and embarrassment or anger. I can kind of look at that as a third party and see what's happening. And then I have a chance to redirect myself and try to focus on different things. Um, I recently saw a clip of something from General Conference, and I was immediately skeptical and critical. I had all these very critical thoughts, and I watched it a second time, and I thought, wait, this is actually some pretty good advice. And so I challenged myself. I didn't like this, and I didn't do this for anyone else. I did it for myself because I thought, look, there's a lot of good here. And Derek, you're not doing yourself a favor by immediately getting defensive. You are cutting yourself off from growth and an ability to take in good information and good advice, regardless of where it comes from. So I challenged myself. I went back and I watched a summary of General Conference, and I took notes on the top things that I felt like were good. That was good advice, and it was good things to focus on. And I came out of that experience feeling very positive and feeling grateful for the principles that I had been raised with in this regard. So that was a really good exercise. Um, so again, when I look at myself and my own growth, I want to see something that looks like the S&P 500. If you look at the S&P 500, which is basically an index fund in the stock market, and you look at it, if you take any 1 day period or a 1 week period, sometimes a lot of times even a 1 year period, you can look at something that looks either really great or just average or stagnant, or you can look at something that looks very discouraging. It's either going up, down, or just a flat line a little bit as far as the trend. But if you zoom out far enough to a 10-year period, you can almost guarantee that you're going to see upward growth. And that's what I'm shooting for in myself. That helps me to maintain a long term perspective. It helps me to come back to the table, like I talked about. So let me give you a couple examples. I'm gonna go through like 4 or 5 examples that I have had with family members or close friends in just the last month. And I won't go into detail on all of them, but I want to just talk about how these are examples of conversations or situations that I have been in where I'm trying and going through this process. So I recently had a conversation with a sibling, and it's a sibling that I have had a little bit more of a challenge to have a strong relationship with. And I have tried to have conversations in the past about, like, hey, can we just talk about our relationship? And, we don't have to feel bad about differences, but, just kind of acknowledge what's there and see, how we can work on things together. I've done that in the past and it didn't work out very well. And I recently did that again. And this sibling was responded in a much different way. Um, they shared a lot of positivity. They were very open. They listened to things that I shared on my side, and they shared things that they had observed in me that really pinpointed some areas that I had not been the best sibling either, and that I had been holding judgment. And this was very emotional. I didn't even recognize it in myself when this sibling pointed this out. Um, so I was emotional in this conversation, but I was also so grateful because it pointed out in me something that I didn't realize. And I had been viewing this relationship as not being the best, and I had been putting it on this sibling, and they helped me to see that this was not just on them, it was partially on me. I was able to take responsibility, I was able to apologize for what I had done, and then make efforts to improve that. And that's been a very cool experience. Um, I've had a conversation with my dad recently, and him sharing a little bit about our relationship and what his expectations were and have been in the past, and how things aren't playing out exactly to what his expectations were. And I've been able to respond to that and try and understand that a little bit more and to change things a little bit. And now in my perspective, our relationship is better and growing, and we've been able to understand each other a little bit more. Um, there's been a close friend that I have as well that we've had a little bit of conflict when it comes to political conversations. And so I told this friend, I said, look, can we have a conversation and just talk about maybe what's going well and what's not in our relationship, and how we can maybe be a little bit more aware of those things. And this person was open to that. And I went to their house and we had a 2 hour conversation about trying to understand each other better, and understanding if we want to have a good relationship, should we just talk openly? Should we be a little bit more careful? And it wasn't one sided. It was both of us listening to each other. And that highlighted some things in myself that I did not recognize, that has changed a little bit of my mindset, and I've been very very grateful for that. Um, Even in the last couple days with my wife, I've had some conversations, and she's shared some things about how she has felt about me at times, and times that I've made her feel not comfortable, and like she has to cater to me and the mood that I'm in at times. And that was humbling to hear. And I wasn't, I don't know. I think I might have been aware of that, but almost on a subconscious level. after she pointed it out, I was like, oh gosh, yeah, that seems kind of obvious now that you're pointing it out. Um, and there were some things that we talked about. There were some areas where she can take some responsibility and communicate and stuff. But that was a tough conversation. But it, again, is one that I'm so grateful for because even since then, I've been able to recognize that, change my behavior, and it has improved our relationship in a very short amount of time. The last one that I'll talk about, because this is the Post Mormon Peace podcast, I'm going to share a conversation that I had with my mom. This was like maybe 3 days ago. Um, we I was at the gym in the morning, and I had finished my workout, and I was about to get on the treadmill, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll call my dad, see if he's available. We can just go walk around the neighborhood. And so I called him, and he said, oh, what if mom comes? And I said, oh, yeah, sure. And then I called my wife and asked if she wanted to join. So the four of us just had a morning walk, about 30 minutes. And then we ended up at their house after and talked for another 30 minutes or so. And my mom was sharing something as we sat in their kitchen. We were talking about different scary movies, and my mom talked about the movie The Village, and I shared how I enjoyed the movie, and she said that what she didn't like about the movie was how the people, and if you haven't seen this movie and you want to, there's going to be a spoiler alert, so but not heavily, so if you can skip maybe the next 30 seconds. But essentially the movie The Village is a group of people that takes their community and they go somewhere that is remote and basically cut themselves off from the world and kind of go back to like an 1800 lifestyle. And in order to keep their members of their community not going, not leaving, they basically have a fence or a boundary and say, if you go outside of that, you're going to be killed by a monster. It's very dangerous, so you have to stay within this community. Um, my mom shared with us that she didn't like this movie as far as the aspect of the people being motivated by fear, and I was like, because I've been a little bit in this phase recently of feeling very critical. I almost like snapped a little bit. I was like, Mom, uh, doesn't that sound like religion to you? Like, how much of religion is just fear? There's a lot of fear that is preached and talked about. There's a lot of people that are motivated by fear of negative consequences. Um, so I that seems. I mean, it's surprising to me because That's like a huge part of what I see in religion and why religion is successful is because of the narrative of fear. And I could tell that I was getting a little bit, I wouldn't say heated, but like heart rate going up. I was feeling my ego come out a little bit, and I could also sense in my mom her, I don't know, she definitely felt caught off guard and maybe attacked a little bit, and I backed off and I discontinued, and we changed the subject or whatever and moved on. And I felt I felt bad about that. I felt like that's not how I want to have conversations. And it was due to some other things that I just have kind of bottled up. And that's just one area where there was a puncture and it was all let out. Not all, but a little bit was let out. And it wasn't in the most peaceful and kind manner. So I recognized that and felt it. I had a little time to digest it, and it was probably only 30 minutes later. And I just I talked to my mom on the phone, and I just said, "Look, I apologize. That was not the best." I said fear is used in many different ways. I talked about politics, parenting, with personal finances. There's a lot of different areas where fear is used as a motive, and religion is not exclusive to that. So I said, I don't think it's an error in religion. I think it's an error in people. Well, a lot of us are motivated by fear, and we talk about what can go wrong if you don't take the right steps, and that's regardless of the topic. And so I apologized, and I shared with her a little bit how I've been feeling a little bit critical and a little bit more pessimistic recently, and that I kind of let that slip, and that and I apologized to her, and I kind of shared. I said, I'm sorry. I think you should be able to share what you want, and not be attacked. And it's not like I was really I wasn't very aggressive, but again, it wasn't a peaceful manner of conversation. So I apologized, and it was a very beautiful conversation, and I felt a lot of gratitude towards my mom for being able to listen and for her forgiveness. So I guess the point, what I want to share, is that it's not about reaching this perfect harmony. In my opinion, it's about uh, continuing to come back to the table, to the conversation. Keep showing up. Keep trying. Keep chewing. Keep choosing love and honesty, even when it's challenging. Real peace, in my mind, isn't just an absence of conflict. It's a commitment to connect, to listen, to understand each other. Peace does not mean agreeing. It means accepting each other, apologizing to each other, forgiving each other. So I would encourage you, when I share these things, have you ever lost your cool? Have you stayed silent too long and then said something that you regretted? Choose this and take this time as an opportunity to recognize that you're just in the middle of the work of the process, that you are in this process of peace. Peace is not a destination, it's a direction. It's a process, it's a commitment. So I would encourage all of you to evaluate and see, is there somewhere that you can go back and apologize? Is there an opportunity to come back to the table and to do it in a way that's not confrontational or aggressive, but that is loving and accepting? So thank you for listening. I'm always open to your thoughts. I appreciate this community and this opportunity to be able to share some of the things that I've shared. If you yourself would be interested in coming on the podcast, or if you know someone that you feel like would be beneficial, please reach out. Postmormonpeace@gmail.com. Take care, everyone.